We've got someone here, though, who can tell us exactly what's going to happen because he's an expert in these things. Social commentator and futurist Mel Fletcher is here to chat through some of his forecasts. Hello, Happy New Year.
Hello, Ellie. Happy New Year to you. No pressure after that introduction.
No pressure at all.
None at all.
Okay, so now back to business and 2019. I think we have to start with probably what everybody is talking about, politics really, because we've had a bit of a breather over Christmas. But I think, it's all going to start again in the next day or two. Some forecasts for next year. I suppose let's talk Brexit.
Okay, well, I can give you my feeling about what will happen in the Brexit process, but I think in a sense there's something even bigger than that we face as a nation going forward. By the way, politics to a futurist is a bit like what handbags are to alligators. It's a minefield. Any forecast you make has to have so many caveats attached.
Sure, particularly at the moment, though.
Yeah, it's such a febrile atmosphere. Look, I think what concerns me as a social futurist more than anything is that whatever happens with the Brexit deal-making process in the next 2 or 3 weeks, the longer-term impact on our trust in politics and in our civility to one another as a society is of importance. And look, let's face it, after Brexit, whatever happens, politicians are going to face an uphill battle to unite their own parties, much less the nation. And it's not just in politics. If you think back 10 years now, and the future only makes sense when you see it in the context of the past, every major foundational institution in our society, Ali, has been called into question, I suppose, in the last decade or so. It started with business and banks. In the financial crisis, we saw it with police and the courts, the church, sadly, with child abuse, politics with MPs' expenses and Brexit. So low trust means low capacity to act. If we don't have trust in the institutions and those who lead them, they're not able to lead and pass policies that benefit us or affect our lives. And we can't leave the solution to that to politicians alone. We're all going to have to find ways to move beyond our little confirmation biases online to reach out to people who don't agree with us.
I only have to look at my timeline in the last month particularly, and there do seem to be a lot more distrust of politicians and the way things have been happening in Parliament in the last month or so. So do you think this is going to reach a peak as we head towards March and the big Brexit date, whatever happens with that?
I think it will, and I think afterwards we're going to have to deal with what I just mentioned, confirmation biases. It's one of the influences that social media has had on the political process in our country and the way we engage with it. Confirmation bias is, you used to have to talk to maybe 15 or 20 people to find one or two that really believe exactly what you believe when it comes to politics. Now you can do it instantly on Twitter or Instagram. Just look for the hashtag. And what that does is it sets up a bias, an information loop, we call it, where you're only really ever reading those who agree with you, your ideas are not challenged, your worldview isn't stretched, and you don't grow as a result. And that also sets us up for something we're seeing in politics now, which is false equivalence, where two ideas which are opposed, one of them has to be wrong because they're mutually exclusive, but they're both treated equally because we think that's tolerance, where we need to be able to robustly debate these things. And that's true in politics. It's become true in this country with universities as well.
That's really interesting. But you're right that we're often in a little bubble. And I think what we'd sort of touched on talking about social media, and we're going to move on to tech as well. I mean, do you think, though, that there is a little bit of a less appetite for getting on social media platforms, and there's a little bit of going to be a move away from that in 2019?
Yeah, it's already happening with Facebook.
Yeah.
And I'm quite happy about that for reasons I won't go into, but I have some problems with Facebook. But there is a move away demographically too. We find younger people dropping off Facebook and Twitter and so on and leaving that to their grandparents who are now there. It's not cool to be where grandma is, if you're 18 or 16. Sure. But I think there are new forms of social media beginning to emerge, and some of them are going to be much more protective of our privacy. They're going to allow us more opportunity to control who has access to our data and what it's used for. Whereas at the moment, the big fish like Facebook will basically sell data to whoever pays the right price. We don't have any say in it. As far as they're concerned, they own the data. So I think that's one of the changes we're going to see.
And also, what else in the world of tech? We talked about social media, but what else are you looking at in 2019 that's going to, well, it's not going to shock you because you know about it, but it might surprise us?
Well, one of the areas that's most interesting to me would surprise some people. When you mention automation, people think straight away of robotics. Robots in aged care homes, in hospitals and so on. But chatbots are important in this year. Chatbots are pieces of software that allow us to converse with machines in fluid, human-like ways, and sometimes in many languages. At the moment, Most chatbots are text-driven, but because of developments in artificial intelligence, more and more of them are becoming voice-driven. So if somebody in the audience today got an Amazon Alexa for Christmas, that has built into it a voice-driven chatbot. You can chat with it, although it tends to be a very stilted conversation at the moment. But text-based chatbots are still important, and they're gradually going to replace apps in many ways and rewire the way we interface with websites. For example, let's say that I want to go from Heathrow to the United States, to Los Angeles on a certain date. I might use 4 or 5 apps to cover all of that at the moment, but a single chatbot could do that in a very conversational way within the space of a few minutes. You know, I want to fly to Heathrow to LA on this day. What are my options? Okay, up comes a list. Here are your options and the best ones from social media reviews.
It's making life easier and easier, isn't it?
Well, it is if you know how to use them. It's like anything else, you know. Technology brings with it its own challenges, doesn't it? And I don't believe, as some do, that chatbots will ever replace human interaction on these sorts of sales, customer relations things. But they do offer important intermediate steps, and they handle tasks that we're probably not needing to handle. And by the way, they're in the professions now. We have the do not pay robotic lawyer that represents people in the digital space as a lawyer would when it comes to parking fines.
Right.
And it's saving some people in this country hundreds and hundreds of pounds. The same technology now is being developed by a British young man to handle some divorce cases and lawsuits.
It's moving, technology, at a ridiculously fast speed. I mean, just what's happened in the last 10, 20 years. It's incredible. Can you give us one more tech futurist idea that might be coming our way?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will have heard the term augmented reality.
But we don't know what it means.
No, well, it basically, we remember laughing at Google Glass. Google Glass were the clunky spectacles that people wore, and when they wore them, they could see images imprinted on what they see, so they could read information about BBC Oxford as they drove past the building. But they're clunky, they looked goofy, they made people look perpetually preoccupied, people were bumping into things, it was pretty daft. Yet, augmented reality as a technology has never really gone away, and it's about to be making some splashes in some interesting ways. There's a company here in Oxford right now, Oxsight, that uses augmented reality tech to build artificial layers around visual images for people who have sight problems. So if I'm looking at someone, can't really see them too clearly, there's a visual layer built around that to help me identify what I'm looking at, what you might be wearing, whether you're smiling, that sort of thing. It's even getting into our communications. Already, if you're this way inclined, there are dating apps on augmented reality. So we have Flirt AR, which allows you to point your... terrible name.
Yes.
Allows you to point your device at someone across a crowded room, and if they're registered with the service, you can read their bio and decide whether you want to strike up a conversation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Kind of begs the question, why don't you just say hello in the first place?
Yes, we are getting a little bit like that, aren't we? This is it's fascinating. Are you all right to hang around for a minute? We'll do a little bit more looking into 2019 in maybe some more technology, but lifestyle as well, and healthcare with our expert Mel Fletcher after this.